story begins with the life of a man who is already over 40, with no money, no job, and no purpose. Just a middle-aged man, forgotten, laughed at, and tossed aside by the world. Now imagine that man walks into a world of monsters, magic, and death, and doesn't just survive, he becomes a living nightmare to everything that stands in his way. This isn't the story of a young prodigy or chosen hero. This is the rise of a broken man, trained to the brink of death by the strongest warriors alive, until he became something unstoppable. His name is Rick Gladiator. He was so exhausted, thinking that he was going to die as he finished the 2-year training he endured from the strongest warrior alive in their world. The 4 warriors both agreed that Rick is probably the only one in their world who could endure that kind of training, so they assured Rick that there's nothing to worry about the E rank exam that he will take, because what he should worry about is whether he will destroy the whole test ground or not. While Rick is lying on the floor, listening to his masters, he just replied in a weak voice that he still has a long way to go to catch up to his masters. Later that morning, Rick attended the Adventurer E rank promotion exam. He enters the guild and walks towards the front desk. A beautiful receptionist greeted him and asked him to show his guild registration card. However, as the girl saw Rick, she was surprised, so Rick was so clueless. The lady called out the name of Rick, and even called Rick Senpai. The lady introduced herself to Rick, and his name is Arisa. Rick recognized the girl, so he asked if Arisa had been transferred to Central. Arisa explained to Rick that she was surprised when the old man suddenly quit and heard that Rick had started working as an adventurer. The girl got even more surprised. Rick proudly explained to Arisa that even looking at everyone in the testing area, there was no one around Rick's age, and many of them were teenagers. He added that others may think that a 32-year-old F rank with joining is a ridiculous thing and unthinkably far behind the curve. It was very rare to see, as members started as adventurers before 20 and within 2 years rose to E rank. However, while Arisa and Rick are talking with each other, a drunk man shows up out of nowhere. He asked if Arisa had any plans in a drunken voice. As Rick saw the man, he was relieved and assured since there was a middle-aged applicant other than him, thinking that the man is an applicant, but he's not, and the man just scared Arisa. The receptionist, Arisa, answered the drunk man that she was not available at the moment. Because of that, the man got mad at her and insisted that Arisa should not say that because she would have fun with the man. Arisa shouted already as the man bothered him and interrupted her from working. The man gets even madder and asks her to shut up, insisting that women should just be quiet and follow. Rick helped Arisa because the man was already holding his hands, trying to grab her from the front desk. Rick swiftly removed the hand from holding to the hand of Arisa. The scenario got escalated, and the man shouted at Rick, asking what he was doing. As the man spoke, Rick covered his nose as the man reeked of alcohol. He is still thinking that the man is an applicant who will take the test together with him, but he's just drunk. Rick tried to cool things down, thinking that he was a clerk for 14 years, and he had overcome any number of difficulties, so he would just accept the challenge to fix things with the drunk man. However, before Rick tries to speak with the man, it suddenly throws a punch towards Rick, who's smiling and trying to be friendly. Everything slowed down as he heard the shout of the man saying the word die. Rick already realizes that the man is so drunk that he won't listen at all. The punch of the man is so slow that it makes Rick think that if it were like the attacks from the past 2 years, he would have been hit 92 times by that moment. In a snap, before the punch lands on Rick's face, he swiftly dodges the punch and spontaneously hits the man with a single blow. As he punched the man, it shattered the body of the man, making the drunk man feel pain. Rick was surprised at what he'd done because it was bad for him, and he would just take the test. His hand just instantly moved after he dodged. Rick was so scared that if it turned into a fight, he couldn't take the exam anymore. The single punch that Rick unleashed knocked down the drunk man, but it made him panic because of the importance of the testing. Rick was shocked that the man was knocked down from that, even though it was just a bit of a push for him. Rick let the man sleep on the ground and asked if Ariza was okay. The lady happily replies to Rick that she's fine while thanking Rick because of how strong Rick is. However, Rick insisted that he is not strong, and the guy was just too weak because the punch he unleashed earlier was weak and slow, too. Ariza can't believe what Rick says, but still agrees with Rick, even though she couldn't even see the punch. They got back to their business. Rick asked if the formalities were finished, so Ariza returned the registration card to Rick. Ariza handed over to Rick the admission ticket, and the exam number of Rick is 4,242, making him feel ominous even though Ariza asked him to do his best. However, Rick can't do anything about it, so he just accepts the exam number, but before he leaves, he sees the man and thinks that he's a weak one since he expected that the level of F-rank people at their age is the same as the drunk man. On his way, Rick was met by a woman who would assist him on his way to the exam venue. The woman's name is Lynette. She called Rick and asked if Rick had finished registering already. Lynette is a fine woman with a good figure, but with pointy ears. Rick smiled and turned red as he saw Lynette, thinking that the woman was cute and that if he were 10 years younger, he would ask the girl out because compared to Ariza, some parts weren't quite as good. Rick gets back to his senses as Lynette speaks and confusedly talks with him about what he's thinking while staring at Lynette's chest. Lynette added that they should hurry to the exam site because everybody is planning on coming, which makes Rick confused because he can't understand the point of everybody coming over. The two continue walking towards the exam site, and Lynette asks Rick out of nowhere why Rick made such a complicated expression on what she said. Rick just explained that he is just happy everybody is coming to cheer him on, but those people coming are loved by trouble, and the things around them will get dragged into it. As the two enter the room and walk towards the site, they see some of the applicants, young and happy, going back while Rick is just taking the exam. Rick sighed and stopped walking. He explained to Lynette that when he sees the young ones, he loses his self-confidence because all of them are sparkling, giving him that I can become anything kind of feeling. Lynette, who was just listening to Rick rant, suddenly replied to the old man, asking why Rick was saying those things. Lynette added that since Rick began as an adventurer 2 years ago, there has been an amazing amount of development in his strength and power. The lady was so sure about it and worried that when other examinees see Rick, they will lose their confidence, so she asked Rick to be sure to restrain himself. Because of what Lynette said, Rick remembered what his senpais once said that at the same about it. Rick realized that he had gotten fairly strong as well, but for the past 2 years, he'd been secluded deep in the mountains training, and when he was a clerk, he was shut away in the guild. Rick insisted to Lynette that because of what he did, he had never actually seen how strong the average adventurer is, so he asked Lynette about the different power levels of each rank, and if they are the same as when he was a clerk. Lynette carefully explained each rank to Rick. In F rank, they are still learning, so fighting even low-level monsters can be dangerous. In E rank, they are officially recognized as a pro, but a low-level monster will still prove tough. In D rank, which is a special rank that almost all adventurers skip this and move to C rank. Since in C rank, they can easily defeat low-rank monsters, but will struggle against high-rank monsters. The B rank can comfortably defeat a high-rank monster solo, and lastly, the A rank can easily defeat a horde of high-rank monsters solo. After hearing the explanation of Lynette, Rick thinks that ranking has a rough format, and following that, he should be strong enough for E rank, but he can't imagine it just from talking. Since Rick is still bothered about his strength, Lynette assures him again and asks him to have confidence in himself. Lynette added that Rick is a member of the party, and it was boasted of as the strongest on the continent, the Orichalcum Fist. Rick just smiled at what Lynette said and added that since he was called one of their comrades, he had to become at least an E rank. He has to get at least one adventurer to recognize him, so he will do his best on the test. Back at the front desk, Arisa called the guards and asked them to take the person to the ground. Everyone immediately cleared the way as the guards came. The worried guard asked Arisa if she was okay because the guard knew that the drunk man had picked a fight with the receptionist. Arisa happily says that is fine because an acquaintance saved him from the drunk man. The guards get closer to the man who is lying on the ground, and they see the mark on the body armor of the man. They were surprised that it's caved in the exact shape of a fist. The guard investigates more about what happened and asks Arisa what kind of strength Rick used to punch the steel armor and do such damage. Arisa was shocked and confused as the guard explained that the man on the ground was wanted for battery and the former A-rank Knight of Tyranny named Damarudo. Arisa was so stunned, but explained that Rick worked at the guild reception desk 2 years ago, as the guard asked who her acquaintance was. As Arisa remembers, he explained that Rick could particularly use magic or martial arts because he was just an ordinary middle-aged clerk. The guard can't just believe what in the world happened in those 2 years that a middle-aged clerk became able to beat an A rank. Back to Rick, he was almost finished with the body examination, and the staff checked his body to record everything. After that, he started to wear his clothes and asked what was next after the body examination. Lynette answered happily that it's an attack power measurement and helps Rick walk the way. She also gave Rick the paper containing the information about the E-rank promotion exam and asked him to confirm the schedule for the rest of the exams. Rick saw that the first exam consisted of body measurement that he had just finished, and next one is attack power measurement, followed by written exam and defense power measurement. However, there's a second exam that is all about mock battle, which makes Rick feel excited about. Rick reached the next exam place with the help of Lynette, and he was so surprised by how big the building looked for an attack power measurement. As they enter the room, all the applicants line up together with Rick. There are 6 of them, and the staff explained to them what they needed to do while showing them the target where they could show off their attack. The staff explained that their target is a slime bag, which was made by processing slime parts and covering them in leather. The examinee added that it excels at absorbing impacts, so the applicants can use it as if they were practicing magic or martial arts. The examinee also explained that each of the applicants can attack the slime bag, and the bag will be used to measure their attack power. They will then assign points based on the strength of their attack. Rick saw the slimy bag and remembered that they used the slime bag all the time during his training. As Rick remembered, his master told him that no matter what kind of magic or weapon one is using, the basis is one's body. His master also told him that when he can destroy the gold slime bag with his fist, he will have developed a body that he can trust. It was so clear to Rick that during his training, the same slime bag was used by his master. At first, he can't believe that the slime bag can be destroyed with a fist or something that can break a dragon's tooth, which can crunch castle walls like butter. Because Rick insisted to his master about the slime bag that time, his master showed him that his master can destroy 200 of those slime bags at once. Rick immediately ran as he heard his master say that he could also do it if he continued to hit it 50,000 times every day. Rick's face couldn't be painted as he remembered his training with his master. He just remembered how his master chased him and asked him not to run away and just hit the bag. Rick was very thankful for that, because he somehow could put a lot of power into his punches and pierce through thick things like that. He wanted to ask for forgiveness. Rick observed the slime bag and saw that its color was green, which means that it's the weakest version. The highest rank in the slime is gold, and the lowest is green, so Rick feels happy about it. The examinees started to call them one by one. The first one is number 4237. The applicant's name is Frito Diramuto. The examiner asked the applicant to go in front of the slime bag. Frito boastfully walks towards the slime bag, and he is so happy that he can display his power. The other applicants are murmuring as they saw Frito, since he was the Diramuto's second son, because there are rumors that the boy's magic is already equal to a C rank. The other applicant added that just to scout Frito, the mage party, Fairy Rondo, paid a fortune. Rick heard all the murmurs, and he was so amazed that at 11 years old, Frito was called a prodigy for the claims and abilities he had. Rick wonders if Frito is a famous person. After all, he can't get jealous of the youth's skills because he is already old enough. In Rick's mind, he thinks that Frito, as the first one to try the slime bag, will be perfect for him to see the boy's power and use it as a reference for how much power he should use. As Frito faced the slime bag, he started to store his power in his hand while saying the spell. A heat matching that of Hell's flame, all things in nature, return to ask, sweltering heat. Third order binding magic. Rick was amazed that Frito uses a third order binding magic at that very young age, because even a kid a C rank, that kind of magic is very difficult. As Rick saw the sweltering heat magic, it brought him back to his magic training with his masters. Rick sweated as he remembered that it's bad for them to get near where the magic will be cast. The master of Rick, who taught him about magic, uses a power like that while explaining to him that if he works the magical power just right, a new magic will come out. Rick remembers that when his master cast the spell and got so interested that the smoke looked like a mushroom, he just ran away from it before his master did again. He was still terrified as he remembered how he ran, but his master just asked him why he was running away. That time, Rick thought that he was going to die, but thanks to that, because he can now defend against light magic attacks. During his training, he was so scared to die and always asking his master not to kill him. But now, he is so thankful that if he couldn't defend himself before, he wouldn't be there taking the exam. Rick's master in magic power is a girl who is a genius too, so he thinks that if Frito uses something of that level of magic in a sealed room, like where they are, it will be bad for them. Before Rick stops Frito, the kid has already finished casting the spell, saying the phrase, "Flame eliminate." Surprisingly, a small fireball came out of the hand of the young boy, Frito, and started to travel towards the slime bag. Rick was so shocked that the fireball came out so small. He thought that it would be the same when his master fired off the same magic that was 100 times bigger than the boy's fireball. It makes Rick think that the prodigy cut corners learning the spell. However, he didn't lose hope for the boy, and also thought that the magic energy that had been compressed held a much higher power. In Rick's mind, he thought that it had that 100x size been compressed, so it's a terrifying magic ability. Rick can't believe what happened. The fireball hit the slime bag and exploded immediately, making the slime bag move a little. Rick was so disappointed, but the people shouted that it's what they expected of the prodigy. Frito boastfully apologized that he had made a mistake in his control and smiled at the commentators around, thinking that he was a prodigy. All the applicants were amazed aside except Rick, that is so disappointed, and thinking that it was way too shabby for a prodigy. The other examinee agreed with the other applicants that Frito was a genius and that they already expected it from a prodigy. The other applicants started to show off their skills and powers, too, with the slime bag. Rick is still quietly watching and waiting, not knowing that one of the examiners noticed his strengthening magic. Rick is so busy thinking that the other 4 people didn't even move the bag. He thought that the test was just a prank. He also thought that the training he was made to go on was strange. Finally, the examiner called number 4242, Rick Gladiator, to the front. Rick walks in front to participate in the test. However, he is still thinking about what he should do because his masters and even Lynette told him to hold back, but he would have to hold back for this level. However, Rick can't hold back too much because he is so scared to fail the test. There are a lot of murmurs while he is walking. The people are thinking that he's pretty old, failing to break through to E rank at his age. Some mock him, saying that they will work hard so they don't end up like Rick. Others say that there are people in the world who can and those who can't, but Rick didn't listen to them. Before he took the test, the examiner asked him if it was true because his profile said that he started as an adventurer at 30. Rick stopped for a minute and proudly answered with a yes. The old examiner rudely explained to Rick that one must train their magical limits until they're 20, because after that, they can't expect to see any growth. He also mentioned that Rick's actual magic measurements are awful, and even he won't say anything bad. He advised Rick to quickly begin searching for another job if Rick fails the exam. The man insists that Rick just give up. All of them started to look at Rick with disappointment on their faces. Rick saw them and recognized those eyes because they looked like they were looking at something pitiful. Rick feels bad about what he heard and insists to himself that even though the amount of his magic is low, is because he got a late start. Rick still understands that what the examiner said is a fair argument. However, he remembered how much he suffered and trained. Even though his masters asked him if they should stop since they were already halfway, he always insisted that he could still go on. He never gives up, and he understands that since he got started late, he can't just stop when he wants. He always reminds himself to keep moving forward, and that it's fine, whatever age the person starts as an adventurer, or whatever age you decide to start something new. Rick always has the will to continue to move forward. His resolve is concrete and can't be bent by others, so he doesn't care about what other people say because it just fuels him more to push forward. He faces the slime bag and prepares himself for the test. He started to calm his mind and decided that he would hold back properly as he had planned. Before Rick started to hit the slime bag, he got the attention of the examiner, who mocked him. Then he called the examiner as Mr. Esteemed Examiner, who looks down on others. Rick asked if the middle-aged guy who started late and has the worst magical capacity would fail if the guy held back. Rick added that if he fails because of it, he should hurry up and quit being an adventurer and start looking for an age-appropriate job. Then he started to close his fist and positioned himself to punch the slime bag with such force. Rick strikes a straight punch towards the slime bag, and as his fist reaches the bag, it starts to explode and break into pieces, causing the debris to scatter all around the room. Even though no one believes that Rick will pass the test, he still moves on and does it for his dreams, unleashing a powerful strike that was the result of his training. A hole was created in the wall of the test site because of the powerful punch that Rick unleashed, and an explosion occurred as his fist hit the slime bag. The examiner, other applicants, and Frito were all shocked at how powerful Rick is. They can't move a thing, as they can't believe what just happened. The face of the old examiner was full of slime from the bag that Rick hit, and exploded because of the power. On the other hand, Rick is still standing in front of the hole in the building, and on the ground, there's the slime that was just scattered because of the force. He can't believe that the green slime bag doesn't absorb the shock of his punch. He thought that the other ones wouldn't have broken with just his punch. Rick looked at his right hand that he used to destroy the slime bag. Then he realized that his masters had taught him a lot over the past 2 years, and that he had trained in different aspects. He added that the only thing that wasn't taught to him was how to hold back. Rick also can't believe how he destroyed the slime bag, even though he held back. As the test continues, Rick proceeds with the written exam and starts answering. Before the time given, he went outside to boast to Lynette that he finished before the others, and he got a perfect score. He added that they should not underestimate a former clerk like him. Lynette agreed with Rick and added that Rick had worked there for 14 years as a clerk, so he might know more than others. Frito was shocked to see Rick outside the written exam site after finishing the written exam. The young boy was terrified, thinking that Rick, as a 40-year-old commoner, gotten in his way twice. However, the boy thought that Rick seemed very specialized in physical attacks, whereas he specialized in defense. Since the next exam is the defense power measurement, Frito grinned, as he was so sure that he would show Rick exactly what he could do. In the defense power measurement exam, Frito was shocked to see that they are against the fourth order magic that even he was not able to completely block. The examiner called the number 4242 to test Rick's defense power. He slowly walked towards a location where they needed to stand and defend themselves from the attack of the examiner. Rick is next in line, and he informs the middle-aged man that he will be raising the level to 5th order spells, so he suggests that Rick use a higher level defense spell, thinking that it might cause damage to Rick if he failed to deflect the attack. However, Rick politely answered that the examiner should not worry about him. He added that he thinks that it is a bit embarrassing, but for attack and defense magic, he can only use one 1st order spell for each. The examiner was shocked by what Rick said. He insists that even though Rick can manipulate magic with such precision, there is no chance for the man to defend himself from a 5th order spell attack using 1st order defense only. But the next spell that will be used will be a 5th order spell, and it was already decided, even though it's natural that a 1st order defense won't stand against it. Before the examiner finished what he was trying to say, Rick insisted that the examiner didn't have to worry about him and just fire the spell at him without restraint. Because of that, the examiner decided that he would do it and insisted to Rick that he should not regret it since he had already warned Rick about it. The examiner started a chant saying, "To the saints who admire the castle walls and the soldiers who cling to them. Listen now, it's the wave of destruction as the southwestern gate rushes in." Then the examiner collected and focused all his magic and energy through his hands, creating a ball of wind waiting to attack. As he pushed his hand towards the direction of Rick, a powerful wind whirling rushed towards Rick while the examiner shouted the phrase, "Shock Cyclone." The commentator and other applicants are watching, can't believe the powerful spell that was unleashed by the examiner. They were shocked to see a fully chanted 5th order spell. One applicant insists that it's not something you can fire off at an E rank exam. The other once replied that that's not something you fire off even at higher levels. The examiner just continues the attack towards Rick, who is just standing and waiting for it. Frito, who is watching together with the applicants, are shocked and also couldn't believe that a 5th order magic was unleashed towards Rick. The examiner, who cast the 5th order magic, knelt on the ground as he gave his everything on the attack he unleashed towards Rick. Everyone can't believe what they all saw, because Rick just defended himself from the attack. None of them is moving and is still standing there. One of the knights came out because he would have thought the exam would be long finished by that time, and he was so confused why all the applicants were so stiff and still standing there waiting. One of the examiners called the knight, and his name is Sylvester. They asked why Sylvester, who is a first-rank knight from the kingdom's chivalric order, came there. Sylvester answered that he was deployed there as the commanding officer for the exam's defense unit. He asked the other staff about the more important matter. He asked what the situation was and what had happened on the exam, because he saw the other applicants still standing there and waiting. The staff and other examiners started to explain everything. The wall of the exam site is still intact and doesn't have any scratches from the examiner's fifth-order spell used on Rick. Sylvester can't believe that an F-rank adventurer with one bare-handed punch destroyed the green slime bag, the wall, and the barrier. He also clarified the report that the F-rank had defended himself against a second-class wizard's fifth-order spell with a first-order spell only. As the examiner continues to explain, Sylvester asks if it's a popular joke in the guild. The examiner insists that it's not a joke or an urban myth because the participant number 4242 exists, and it seems like there were some misunderstandings. The examiner clarifies that the bag wasn't made of the lowest grade green slimes because it was a composite of an item made from the mid-grades, blue, and yellow slimes. Sylvester was shocked by what he heard from the examiner, and got even more shocked when the examiner said that the spell used by the mage was a fully chanted fifth-order spell, and the participant number 4242 used to defend against it, using a non-chanted first-order spell. Since the knight Sylvester can't believe what Rick did during the exam, he insisted that it's impossible, and both of those things that were explained to him, even for a first-rank knight like himself, it not impossible. The knight asked who the examinee number 4242 that done those impossible things during the exam. The examiner asked if Sylvester would like to look at the registration papers of the applicant 4242. The knight gets the registration paper, and he is shocked to see that the applicant is 32 years old. He can't believe that the applicant is an F rank at the age of 32 and has that much power. He asked about what kind of life Rick had led, and he saw the face of Rick. He was shocked to see that the registration paper says that everything the examiner said is correct. The work history of Rick is at the Tiger Road Guild, Sincato Division, and Reception. As he saw it, he scrubbed his eyes to check if he was just hallucinating. The knight looked at it again and saw that it was true. Rick was just working at Reception before. He really couldn't believe what he was just reading about Rick's registration paper, because Rick has been working as a receptionist for 14 years and doing clerical work. Sylvester asked the examiner if it's some title for somebody who subjugated a dragon, and the examiner just answered him with a plain no. Meanwhile, Rick is already resting after the exam outside the site and speaking with Lynette. He was so shocked that he didn't need to hold back on the first exam. Lynette clarified to Rick that when they said to be sure on holding back, that was about the second exam, when Rick's mock battle will be against another person. Rick felt relieved as he heard what Lynette said, thinking that he was worried over nothing. He misunderstood what Lynette and the others said to him, so he was scared earlier about holding back in the exam. While the two of them are speaking, out of nowhere, someone shouts at them, calling Rick a commoner. It caught their attention, and they looked at the person calling them. Rick saw Frito, and he remembered the young boy. He insisted that Frito was at the exam, and he is the one called the prodigy. He remembered the boy in the face, but not in name, thinking that Frito's name starts with the letter N. Because of that, Frito got mad and insisted that there's no single N in his name. He introduced himself to Rick and said that he is the prodigy Frito Diramuto. Rick insisted to Lynette that he feels bad when a kid gets lost, so he asked if they could help and go look for Frito's parents. Rick genuinely thinks that the boy is lost, but he's not. Frito gets mad and insists that Rick should not make fun of him. He added that he was going to brilliantly show off his genius on the previous exam, but Rick got in the way with dirty tricks. Rick panicked as he saw that Frito started crying. He insisted to the boy that he didn't use anything like a dirty trick, trying to explain everything to the boy, but someone called him while he was trying to stop the boy from crying. It's Frito's big sister. He madly shouted towards Rick, saying that Rick had some guts to make her little brother cry, while pointing her finger towards Rick. Lynette and Rick were shocked as they saw Angelica. Rick asked if the lady was the little guy's big sister, since the lady called the boy little brother. Angelica answered Rick with a yes and introduced herself as the firstborn daughter of the Diramudo household. Frito rushes towards Angelica while he's crying. He insisted to his big sister that Rick is an old guy in his 40s and bullied him. As Frito reached his sister, he immediately hugged his sister, then continued crying. Rick heard what Frito said, and he insisted that he is still around 30. Angelica walks towards Rick, who is explaining that he didn't bully Frito. However, Angelica has already decided that her brother was bullied and insists that Rick is around 40 already, even though Rick insists that he is still around 30. Angelica is not listening and insists that Rick be silent. The lady insists that his cute little brother, Frito, said it so. She added that Rick was obviously around 40 and must be evil. Rick just insists that he already said that he is around 30, but Angelica didn't listen to him and just removed her gloves. Angelica didn't know the name of Rick, so he said, "To you who is in your 40s, I am officially challenging you to a duel." Rick was so surprised by what Angelica said and insisted that he was still around 30. Rick saw the gloves dropped by Angelica on the ground, so he picked them from the ground to give them back to the lady. He insisted that a glove be washed until it's pure white, and a noble lady, like Angelica, probably wouldn't understand, but laundry is awful. As Rick picked up the gloves, Lynette explained to him that picking up the gloves means that Rick agrees to the duel. He is not aware of it, so he was shocked and couldn't believe what he had just done by picking up the gloves for the lady. Angelica saw that Rick picked up the gloves, so she explained that in a Philheen Kingdom-style duel, both parties may give one condition. Frito is hiding behind his sister, and Rick can't believe how he agreed to the duel. Rick is not saying anything while Angelica insists that his condition is that the loser has to serve as the other's servant until they die. She introduced herself as a second-class knight in the Kingdom's chivalric order, Angelica Diramudo, and shall mete out Rick's punishment. She kept calling Rick around 40, even though Rick insisted that he is around 30. They go inside the big arena as they discuss the location of their duel. There are only 4 of them, Rick, Lynette, Angelica, and Frito, who is outside the ring cheering for his big sister to do it and defeat the middle-aged man, Rick. Angelica boastfully insists that she will thoroughly discipline Rick in their duel. However, for Rick, what happened has turned into something troublesome, even though he just wants to focus on the exam. Rick had heard Angelica before, so he asked Lynette if the lady in front of him was a second class in the Kingdom's chivalric order, because the lady might be pretty strong. Lynette explained that the Kingdom's chivalric order is in charge of preserving the peace in the Philheen Kingdom. She added that in terms of the second class, only the knights of the first class are of a higher rank. So more or less, there's also a legendary class of knights which only 13 people have achieved. The title is known as the Special Class Knights, and that is not directly related to the hierarchy of the knights. Lynette assured Rick that a second-class knight would be around a B-rank adventurer's level, so there's nothing much to worry about the opponent of Rick. However, Rick insists that it's plenty strong for him. Before Lynette leaves, he asks Rick to make sure to hold back properly. Rick was so shocked about holding back even for him. The opponent is facing is much tougher than him. She insists to Lynette that Angelica has a way higher position though, and he only just became an F-rank adventurer. Angelica asked him if he felt uneasy, which made Rick terrified. The middle-aged man, Rick, was so worried about whether he would survive and be able to return home safely. Rick started to panic, asking anyone to save him. However, Lynette is so calm, asking him to remember the training that Rick has done for the past 2 years. Rick suddenly smiled and remembered the past 2 years he had trained, then came back from asking for help. Lynette asked how Rick felt before the battle started. Rick insists that his spirit is crumbling. But Lynette asked again if Rick is not stressed anymore, while smiling. Rick looked at Lynette and smiled back, thinking that Lynette was correct, that not everybody was surprised at his strength on the exam, and he had become strong in my way. It makes Rick motivated again, and he stands up to walk towards Angelica. He informed Lynette that he would be going for a bit, then Lynette just replied for Rick to take care. Angelica saw Rick walking towards her, so she asked if Rick was already finished getting ready. In Rick's mind, he thinks that his opponent is a second-class knight, and he doesn't know the limits of what he can do, so he will just do all that he can. Angelica saw Rick's expression and insisted that it had changed from earlier, so she just laughed at Rick. She added that in the end, Rick is an F rank, and she will just hold back enough so Rick doesn't die at least. Rick is just standing and waiting. He saw the stance of Angelica as the lady showed her sword. In his mind, he thinks that the lady is a swordsman specializing in strengthening magic, reinforcing her body and her weapon. The battle begins as Angelica asks Rick to keep up with her speed. She rushed towards Rick after saying that she was going to attack. The lady using the sword started to dash and called it a blink step, while Rick was just standing and waiting for Angelica's attack. Rick was shocked by the attack of Angelica, which broke the wall behind him. By just using a sword, it causes the wall to be sliced. Rick couldn't believe the lady's attack, but Angelica insisted that in a place of greeting for an F rank like Rick, it was a little slow in giving it, but she insisted that it seemed it was still too fast for Rick. As the battle continues, Rick is still standing where he was earlier. Angelica is on the other side of the arena as she attacks Rick using his blink step. Frito is still watching and laughing as he sees his big sister attack. Frito called Rick a 40-year-old peasant and asked if Rick had seen the attack. He added that his big sister is known as the Flash of Light Angelica, and her sister has a reputation for her insane speed. Angelica followed it by saying that Rick seemed shocked, causing Rick's voice not even come out. She added that next time, she won't be missing on purpose. Rick is not saying anything again, and is just listening to what the two are saying. Angelica attacks again using his blink step and rushes towards Rick, who is just waiting and standing. Everything went slow for Rick, and he confirmed it as Angelica got closer to him. His eyes widened as the lady approached him. For Rick, it's too slow. He is still standing and waiting for the lady to reach him and attack him using the famous blink step that the girl is using towards him. In his mind, it's way slower than when he is just running normally, so he asked himself if this was what they called the flash of light. Lynette is on the sidelines, panicking because Rick is not moving. He shouted the name of the middle-aged man, Rick. He realized that he had to dodge it quickly, even though he could see through it. Rick swiftly dodges the blink step of Angelica, causing the lady to pass by Rick, who swiftly moves to dodge. Angelica can't believe that her blink step was dodged in the last second. She realized that by the moment she attacked Rick, it was like Rick perfectly saw all of her movements. So she stopped immediately as she saw that Rick dodged her attack. Even though Angelica can't believe how fast Rick reacts to her attack, she doesn't want to let it be, and just dodges swiftly. In Angelica's mind, she thinks that there are only a handful of first-class knights who can react directly to her speed, and she can't believe that the 40-year-old she's fighting wasn't able to react to her movements earlier. Angelica thinks that Rick dodging her attack was just a lucky coincidence. He thought that Rick happened to move and dodged it. He added that there won't be any more flukes, though. The lady swung his sword again and attacked using her blink step to prove that she's correct. However, as the lady uses her blink step to attack, she hits a rock on the ground. She saw the rock that she had just kicked, causing her to stumble and slip. Rick thinks that the lady's attack is slower than he thought, and he is shocked that he is now facing a second-class knight. He also thinks that the lady just uses her noble connections to get into the order, but also doubts that he just got really strong by that time because of the training he had done. As Rick checked the girl in front of him, waiting for the right time to dodge again, he was shocked. As the lady stumbled, she spun like a whirling wind that made Rick surprised because he was just waiting to dodge the blink step, not a whirling attack in front of him. Rick can't move because he doesn't know what to do with that kind of situation. He didn't know that the lady could do an attack like that, but the truth is, Angelica just stumbled due to the rock, causing her to spin and creating a whirling attack involuntarily. From Rick's point of view, Angelica is rotating herself to launch a disordered series of slashing attacks. He is now remembering that his masters taught him various martial arts, but that is the first time he had seen that kind of technique. So Rick doesn't have any idea how to defend himself against the lady's whirling attack. Rick tries to dodge the attack of Angelica, and he is doubting if he will be able to dodge all of it. In the end, he doesn't have any choice but to move and dodge every sword slash from a lady's attack. As Rick dodges everything from the whirling attack of Angelica, he is so surprised by what he has just done. He started questioning himself, and he is asking if he is that strong. Then suddenly insists that he is so conceited because even if he was strong, it was among the F rank. He thinks that, after all, he is just a beginner, and there's always someone better. Rick is still standing in the same spot he was standing earlier, thinking that the move of Angelica was amazing. Even the tactics are truly cunning. He added that the lady purposefully only used a portion of the full speed of blink speed, and as soon as he let his guard down, the lady would come to land the killing blow. Rick was so amazed to see the strength of a second-class knight, not knowing that on the mind of Angelica, she was thinking that she just tripped over the rock with a wild amount of momentum, but she saw that Rick hadn't noticed it, so she would just keep deceiving the man he is fighting. Angelica caught the attention of Rick and said that the movement she just showed, and Rick responded to her charge over here. She added that the last time her movement was seen so clearly was when she had a bout with Special Class Knight, but insisted that if Rick can see through it, all she has to do is move faster until Rick can't. Angelica is kept on bluffing. She attacked again and asked Rick to prepare himself. She insisted that starting that moment, she would go to use a high-speed technique that she could only use 3 times a day. She added that the burden on her body is large. It's an order of magnitude faster than the speed she's shown Rick up until that time. Angelica started to dash towards Rick again to attack and use her blink step. As Angelica attacked, Rick noticed that the lady was 3 times faster than she was before, but he still expected that it was slow for him. Rick is doubting whether the lady is being serious. In his mind, he is fighting himself to not let his guard down because it might be a trap, the same as earlier. On the other hand, Angelica is now thinking that if she strikes carelessly, she will let loose a lethal counter. She is so mad thinking that at her rate, she is not making any progress. The lady pushed her sword towards Rick, and it was an inch before the tip of the sword hit the face of Rick. However, Rick is still thinking that he will just observe the lady's movement one more time, and then the next time, when the lady comes charging in, he will greet the lady with a critical first attack. Because of that, Rick swiftly moved aside again to dodge the attack of Angelica, making the lady pass him again, like a matador dodges a bull. The young lady can't believe how the old man was able to dodge her attack, which should be unstoppable. She is now wondering who the guy is in front of him. Swiftly dodging all her attacks, she even asked herself if the guy she's fighting is an F rank. She can only use the attack she called Rin 2 more times, as she said earlier. Angelica didn't know what she should do, and what she should do to win. She is now losing hope, because her powerful attacks were just dodged by the man swiftly. However, she easily brought back her confidence, and thinks that it isn't something that requires that much thought. Angelica has decided that if Rick can avoid her attack one at a time, then she will just strike at Rick at her top speed multiple times in succession. Her determination fires her up to attack more, even if it's still unknown territory for her. She is now coming with a continuous attack. The young lady dodges without hesitation and uses a combination of a blink step and Rin. She attacks continuously with that combination, giving her everything just to defeat the man she is fighting. As she expected, Rick dodged the combination of attacks, but she didn't lose any hope. Even though she is hurting, she continues attacking using the combination and rushes towards Rick. Angelica uses her willpower to continue attacking Rick with a combination of blink step and Rin. She tightened her grip on her sword and started rushing towards Rick to attack with full force. Rick, on the other hand, is waiting and has positioned himself to counter the attack of the young lady, as he decided earlier. He is so focused that he will not let his guard down because he thinks that the blink step of Angelica is just a fake, and when Angelica goes for the lethal strike, he will attack in return. However, before Angelica landed her attack on Rick, she was tripped by a rock again, causing her to slip and stumble. Rick was shocked, thinking that Angelica had just vanished, and didn't see that the lady had tripped over a rock during the attack. As Rick tries to find the lady, he panics and realizes that it's just disappeared, and then goes below him, so he swiftly looks below him to find the lady. Angelica, who was tripped by a rock, continued to slip below Rick and started to fall to the ground, while Rick was still waiting for the attack from the lady. The lady's face and body slammed on the ground, but in her mind, she is thinking if Rick read her attack, still trying to win the fight. However, Rick, who didn't know that the lady had tripped, is getting ready to attack the lady below her. Rick had already positioned himself and prepared to use his attack in front, but the lady was now below her, and he had already decided that he would connect that attack no matter what happened. Since the lady attacked below him, he tried to make it in time by directing his attack on the ground, thinking that he might deflect the attack of lady. A huge explosion occurred as the attack of Rick hit the ground. Debris was everywhere, and the rocks from the ground scattered all around the arena. Due to the powerful attack that Rick unleashed, the young lady, Angelica, flew to the sky together with the debris and rocks from the ground. The attack was so powerful, causing an explosion, and the fog was created like a bomb that exploded. Angelica, behind Rick, was so terrified of how powerful Rick is, while the middle-aged man, Rick, was still standing on the ground where the attack landed. The ground around has cracks, looks like it was smashed many times. The lady was so thankful that if she hadn't tripped over the rock on the ground, the punch of Rick might have ended her life. However, Rick is still ready to fight, and he already expected that the lady would surely dodge his attack because he already expected it from second-class night. Angelica is about to cry, asking who Rick is because for her, Rick is just a 40-year-old man. Rick explained that he is just someone who turned over a new leaf 2 years ago and went from guild reception to a recently F-rank adventurer. Angelica can't believe what Rick said and insists that the man is lying. Rick insisted to the lady that he was told to hold back when he fought against other people, but he knew that there was no way that he would have the leeway to do that with someone high-ranking like Angelica. Rick added that he will take that chance given to him to practice against a skilled opponent, while referring to Angelica, who is now terrified of his strength. The middle-aged man, Rick, insisted that he would be going all out as they continued. However, Angelica raised her hands upward, showing that she will not fight anymore, while insisting to Rick that she has already surrendered. It makes Rick think that Angelica is just making fun of him, so he still insists on continuing their battle. The misunderstanding between Rick and Angelica continues as Rick unleashes a powerful blow that destroys the ground, creating huge cracks on the floor. The middle-aged man, Rick, is still standing at the center of the arena, and he was so confused that Angelica surrendered. In his mind, he's asking why the lady surrendered even though the lady was winning. Angelica cries, and his voice is breaking while saying that she admits her defeat by that time. She is shaking while pointing her fingers towards Rick, who is now more confused and asking why the lady is admitting her defeat because he thought that the lady was winning over him. Angelica started to walk slowly towards her brother, Frito, while saying to her brother that she would be going. Frito immediately followed her sister without hesitation. Rick was so surprised by how Angelica acted, leaving him alone in the arena without saying a thing. Before Angelica completely leaves the arena, Rick asks the young lady about the pact they had just agreed to earlier before they started the duel. Rick remembers clearly that the condition of Angelica is that the loser has to serve as the other's servant until they die. Rick mentioned to the lady that he didn't say his condition, but they can at least stick with the condition of Angelica about the servant thing. Even the young lady heard it and remembered about the condition they had. She didn't look back or stop to speak with Rick. Instead of granting the condition of the duel, Angelica didn't stop running and shouted to Rick that she would once more overcome her limits. She uses her combination of Rin and Blink Step again, running and dashing outside the arena. Because of that, Rick was left alone with Lynette inside the arena. He didn't chase the lady and just observe how the lady ran from him, realizing that the last move of Angelica was the fastest speed he saw that day. Rick didn't bother to chase the lady and just thought that the lady might suddenly feel unwell. He was so clueless that Angelica just ran away from him and just forgot about their pact on who would win the duel. Lynette and Rick were left inside the arena as Angelica leaves with Frito. Because of that, they just went to the next location of the exam and prepared for the upcoming exam. While they are waiting for the next exam, Lynette is just listening to Rick, who is now ranting and asking if he made it through the first exams before he just holds back showing what he got. Lynette directly answered Rick that if Rick did pass the exam, it's good, and if Rick failed, then he would just increase his training by 3x the amount at any rate, because it will be beneficial to Rick for the next time he tries. The middle-aged man, Rick, heard what Lynette said and insisted that the training would kill him. Then suddenly, someone called Lynette, calling her beautiful dark elf. A man showed up saying that there's something he would like to ask Lynette, so he asked if Lynette had time. But Lynette declined the man, saying that she needs to go somewhere after what she's doing with Rick. The man ignored it and started introducing himself while walking towards Rick and Lynette. The man's name is Lost Star Diramudo. He explained that he was from a family that governed the noble people of the northern region, and he was the Duke's firstborn son. The man boastfully introduced himself, thinking that he was from the noble family of the Diramudo. The man asked the name of the beautiful, dark elf in a boastful and polite manner, and the elf introduced that her name is Lynette Elfelt. As Lost Star heard the name of Lynette, he exaggeratedly touched his head, saying that even Lynette's name is beautiful the same, like Lynette's appearance. Rick stood behind Lynette to check the man in front of him. Lost Star explained to Lynette that he had dropped something valuable earlier, asking if Lynette was interested in what he had just dropped. Lynette just answered Lost Star with a plain no, but Lost Star ignored it, thinking that Lynette was interested in him, and continued telling what he had just dropped earlier. Lost Star grabbed the hand of Lynette and blinked his eyes towards Lynette, trying to attract the lady. He romantically explained that he dropped his feelings of love into the depths of Lynette's eyes. However, in Lynette's mind, she is wondering what the man in front of her was trying to do. Lost Star started to move his hands towards Lynette, who was not moving a thing, and just staring at their hands. Lost Star says that after the exam ends, he would like Lynette to come to the north with him, and he wants Lynette to come as his second wife. What Lost Star said and did caught the attention of Rick, seeing the situation of Lynette. Rick helped Lynette and hid Lynette behind him to face Lost Star, which surprised Lynette. Rick insists that Lynette is his girlfriend, and he can't just be silent as some other guy hits on his girl. In his mind, he knows that he is in a bad situation because he knows that Lynette probably hates the lie he just said to help, but he still asks Lynette to just bear with him for a mean time until they get out of the situation, and Lynette just lets Rick handle the situation. Lost Star was surprised by what he heard from the middle-aged man in front of him, and he couldn't believe that the lady he tried to hit on was with a boring, typical middle-aged guy, referring to Rick. Lost Star saw the exam admission ticket that Rick is holding, and he asked if Rick is an examinee for the promotion exam. Rick clarified that he is an examinee, and Lost Star started laughing at him, mocking Rick for being an F rank at his age. He just laughs and mocks Rick, thinking that the middle-aged man in front of him is just joking. Rick asks the man who mocks him if the man came to take the exam at 24 or 25, and asks if it's a lot slower than other people. Laster was surprised by what Rick said and clarified that he is an A rank, and he became an E rank when he was 14. Because of that, Rick's eyes widened due to surprise. Laster added that he is an examiner for the second exam's mock battles while grinning at Rick, who is now terrified, thinking that he picked a fight with one of the examiners. Rick was stunned by what he had just heard, and he couldn't believe that the guy in front of him was an examiner. However, Laster didn't mind Rick and insisted that Lynette just leave the mob-looking guy and come out to lunch with him. He is referring to Rick as the mob-looking guy but Lynette replied to what Laster said. She insists to Laster that she is dating the mob-looking guy, who is Rick. Lynette started to grab the arm of Rick and added that she can't accept the invitation of Laster since she is going out with Rick. Lynette mentioned that the scent of Laster's perfume is too strong and it's unpleasant. Rick added that he thought something stank and clarified if it's Laster's smell. Because of that, Laster got mad and started to shout and say that a third-rate person like Rick isn't fit to be with a first-class beauty like Lynette. He madly insists to Rick that in the second exam, if he is the one in charge of Rick's group, then Rick should prepare himself. He added that he will make sure to open Lynette's eyes and make sure that Lynette will realize how thoroughly different their positions are. Laster walks away after saying it, leaving Lynette and Rick, who are now terrified of what might happen on the second exam. Rick thinks that it turned into something troublesome again, and he hopes that the guy isn't in charge of his group for the exam. The staff started to post the group of applicants for the second exam's mock battle, and Lynette saw it, so she caught the attention of Rick to check the numbers of those who passed to look for his number. They started looking for the number 4242 on the start that was posted on the board in the waiting room. Rick was so happy as he saw the number 4242 and gladly celebrated while saying that he did it. Lynette congratulates Rick for passing the first exam, while Rick is holding her shoulder and shaking her due to excitement. As Rick realized what he was doing and apologized to Lynette. He also apologized for suddenly treating Lynette like his girlfriend, and he knew that pretending to be the girlfriend of an old guy like him was probably unpleasant. Rick was so embarrassed as he apologized for what he had done earlier to help Lynette. However, Lynette insisted on getting mad. Lynette smiled and explained to Rick that she was happy with what Rick did for her. After saying that, Lynette left and said that she would be going to report to the party for the passing of Rick for his first exam. Rick was so surprised by how Lynette reacted, and he turned red because of that. Meanwhile, inside a restaurant bar, the silence of the people minding their own business was broken when Laster suddenly kicked a chair as he ranted about Rick, who was a less-than third-rate bastard. Lastar was so mad about what happened to him and Rick, so he kept ranting about the people who are born with an innate rank, and that if he found Rick in a bathroom, he would give Rick a fight. Then, suddenly, Laster was surprised by someone rushing towards him. It's her sister and brother, who were crying and ranting about something, so he asked what happened to his little brother and sister. Frito is crying while explaining that on the first exams, he was trying to show off his genius, but a man around 40 used a dirty trick to get in his way. Angelica added that the man used the conditions of a duel, and it seemed like the man was going to try and take advantage of her. Laster got even madder on what he heard, so his madness boils up and he is about to explode. As the firstborn child, it's unforgivable for him to know that someone is doing such a thing to his little brother and sister. He asked her sister Angelica to describe what kind of man tries to take advantage of her. Angelica insisted that the man was a middle-aged 40-year-old who worked at the town hall. Laster imagined someone in his mind as her sister describes the man, so he asked if his little brother remembered the man's exam number. Rick and Lynette are unaware that Laster, Frito, and Angelica are siblings. Rick just proceeds with the second exam, and Lynette escorts him to the exam site. Rick is now sweating, not because he is scared of his opponents. His problem is having a human opponent in the mock battle and thinking whether he can hold back properly. He is worried that if he holds back, he might lose, and he's also worrying about who will be the examiner. Rick can't stop the anxiety because he keeps overthinking the mock battle and who will be the examiner of the second exam. Lynette is trying to calm Rick down and trying to help Rick avoid overthinking things. Suddenly, someone called Rick and caught their attention. The man politely asked Rick if he was Rick Gladiator, and he was so surprised at why the man was looking for him. Rick confirmed that he is the person that the man is looking for, and he asked if he had met the man before. The man feels so rude for his action, so he apologizes and insists that he knows something one-sidedly about Rick. However, the man politely introduced himself to Lynette and Rick. His name is Lynx Lolato. The man informed Rick that he would be the examiner in charge of Rick's second exam. As Rick heard it, he was so thankful that it was not Lost Star who just called himself Hale. The man added that he looked through the profiles of the people he's in charge of, and he doubted his eyes seeing the switching jobs from reception to adventurer at the age of 30, and he can't believe it. He is holding his chin while thinking about the profile of Rick. Because of that, Rick thought that it was just the same flow with the pattern, where the people ridicule him for starting late. He started hoping not to don't have another source of worry because of what the examiner said. Surprisingly, the examiner excitedly said that Rick shows an incredible determination for switching jobs, even as old. It makes Rick stunned because for the first time, there's a person who didn't mock his age and see how determined he is. The examiner insisted to Rick that, as a fellow middle-aged person, he was encouraged by what Rick did. He added that being a person like Rick, he was fueled to pursue his dreams. Rick saw the eyes of the examiner, and he felt that the man in front of him was not saying those things to be snide, but the man was really telling what he truly felt. The examiner explained that he became an adventurer when he was 24 and thought that he had entered late. He added that Rick jumping from being a receptionist to an adventurer 6 years later than even he did means that Rick must have wanted something very badly, like a dream Rick wanted to achieve no matter the cost. Rick insists that the examiner is correct and he really has a dream, which is why he doesn't care about his age. He asked the examiner how the examiner knew that he had a dream, and the examiner answered Rick that he got it because he's also in his 40s, but he still has dreams as well. The examiner added that to achieve his dream, he needs to become an A rank. He explained to Rick that he had been working on it for 20 years, and he had only just made it to B rank, but he was not planning on giving up the same with Rick. In Rick's mind, he thinks that the person in front of him is the same as him, who is that passionate about something, and the man is there even if it's not fitting of his age. Rick extended his arm and offered a handshake to the examiner, saying that they are the same, and they both have dreams that they have kept fighting for. The two of them shake hands, and they look forward to their mock battle, because the examiner won't be playing favorites with Rick. However, the examiner offered to get a drink with Rick after the exam ended, and Rick agreed. As the examiner leaves and proceeds to the exam site, a strange person is waiting on the stairs. The man called the examiner, saying that there was something he needed to discuss with the examiner. The man who called the examiner is Lost Star. He commented that the examiner has amazing hands like a battle-worn martial artist. It made the examiner happy for someone to appreciate his hard work, and he explained that he had to work harder than the others, but before he continued what he was saying, Lost Star called him a third ring and asked if the examiner was free. Rick and Lynette went back to the waiting area before the second exam started. They saw that Lost Star Duramuto is the examiner of 4100 to 4199, and Lynx Lolato is the examiner of 4200 to 4299. Rick thought earlier that the examiner in his group was Lost Star, but thankfully it's Lynx. He was so scared that if the group had been off by one, Hale or Lost Star would have been his examiner. The anxiety of Rick turns into determination as he promised that he won't lose to the curse of 4242 because he thinks that his link is turning. While checking his exam slip, an announcement for the examinee participants 4200 to 4299 occurred, and they are all surprised. The announcement says that the examiner links Lolato's physical condition has taken a sudden turn for the worse, and as such, the Lynx will be unable to take charge of the exam. The news makes Rick worry. Rick worries about Lynx because Lynx seemed fine earlier while the two of them were speaking with each other. The announcement is not yet finished, so Rick kept on listening to the decision on who would be their examiner. It was decided that Lost Star Duramuto will continue and also be in charge of Rick's group. As Rick heard about the changes, he spilled what he was drinking at the time. Rick can't believe the changes in who will be the examiner of their group. He heard some applicants say Lost Star is the worst, and it might be impossible for them to pass the exam since Lost Star is the examiner. Because of that, Rick walked towards the other applicants and asked if the examiner Lost Star is famous. One of the applicants answered that Lost Star is famous. He is the firstborn son of the prestigious Duramuto household and is called the man who holds 1,000 skills, the A-rank's most powerful mage. However, the problem is that Lost Star is known by one other name. He is the F-rank crusher. The applicant continues to explain that every year, Lost Star only participates in the E-rank mock battles, and Lost Star torments the ones that have caught his eye because it seems like Lost Star is enjoying it. The applicant warned Rick to make sure that Rick would not catch the attention of Lost Star. However, Rick had already caught the attention of the F-rank crusher, and he caught Laster's eye so hard that he was practically biting Rick with them. While they are speaking, medics transferring an injured applicant on a stretcher past them. The applicant on the stretcher is holding his ribs, and it looks like he is hurt badly, so he needs immediate medical assistance. As the applicant on the stretcher passed them, he uttered some words even though he was bleeding. He mentioned to the other applicant that F-rank crusher is a bastard who participates in an E-rank exam using something ridiculous like a 6th order spell. Rick saw the injured applicant on the stretcher and heard what the lady applicant told him about the F-rank crusher, so he panicked and didn't know what to do during the mock battle for the second exam. Inside the stadium, where the mock battle happened, Lost Star is casting a spell without sweating and just chants. Freeze the deep green earth, 4th order magic. Blizzard rock shot. The F-rank crusher Lost Star uses a 4th order magic to pass an E-rank exam without hesitation. It causes the applicant to fly and start to get hit by the spell. After Laster's attack, an explosion occurred as the applicant received the powerful blow. He insisted that the applicant was no good for him and that the applicant was absolutely less than a third-rate bastard. The audience watching the second exam mock battle was shocked by what they saw because to defend against 4th order magic, you would need at least B-rank level defense magic. They also noticed that the examiner at the event doesn't intend to let anybody pass the exam. However, the examiner, Lost Star, the F-rank crusher, still waits for the number 4,242 because he badly wants to let Rick have a taste of dread that is so powerful that even the pits of hell will feel lukewarm. Suddenly, a man stops Lost Star on what he wants to happen. The man who caught the attention of Lost Star is an elite guard from their family, so Lost Star asked the elite guard what the guard wanted. The elite guard offers to leave the disposal of Rick on them, who is the applicant number 4242, whom they thought of as an enemy. Lost Star declined the offer of the guard and insisted that he would be the one who would go to punish Rick. He also asked the guards not to get in his way. The elite guard insisted that losing to Lost Star, the strongest A rank, would not be a very humiliating thing. Because of that, Lost Star thinks about it since he badly wants to humiliate Rick in front of others. Lost Star insisted to the elite guard that it would be better if he would eliminate Rick from the exam because it would make Rick's pride and hard work trampled by a simple, unreasonable disqualification. Lost Star thought that it would certainly be humiliating for Rick. Lost Star, the F-rank crusher, added that timeliness is first and foremost in the exam, and it'd be good to see Rick struggling to make it in time. He ordered the elite guard to help him with his plan about making Rick struggle to make it on time, and the guard agreed as part of their job to follow. Rick and Lynette are waiting for the next round of the exam, and as they learned about the changes in the examiner, Rick can't focus and doesn't know what he should do. Lynette asked why Rick is so flustered hearing about Lost Star being their examiner. Rick is so terrified while explaining to Lynette that he is flustered because the examiner holds a grudge against him, and the examiner, Lost Star, is the strongest A rank. Lynette is trying to calm Rick and clarify that Rick is now stronger, but Rick is not listening and already wants to go home because he doesn't know what he should do. He thinks that if he goes home, his training will be multiplied by 3, and the same if he fails the exam. Rick lost hope and thought that his death was settled. Rick was called a young fellow by someone, and he was surprised. The person who called him wears a cloak in front of a magic crystal. The person clarifies whether Rick is an examinee and offers fortune-telling services to Rick. He added that if Rick has any concerns, he can ask for free. Rick insisted that the fortune-teller is not in the right place, and he asked the fortune-teller not to get away on his fluster. However, the fortune-teller ignored what Rick said and mentioned that Rick is hopelessly stressed, so he offered about magic to help Rick calm down. The fortune-teller explained that he understood if Rick suspected him as a test, so he offered to help Rick for free and for nothing in return. Because of that, Rick agreed to do it with the fortune-teller, and Lynette is just observing the two. The fortune-teller asked Rick to sit in the chair in front of him, so Rick immediately grabbed the chair and sat to start the fortune-telling. The symbol on the chair caught the attention of Lynette because it looked familiar to her. Before Lynette stopped Rick from sitting in the chair, it was too late. Rick had already sat on it and immediately vanished, which made Lynette surprised and frustrated. The fortune-teller started to show himself and explained that the magic circle on the chair is a teleportation magic. He was laughing as Rick fell for their trap. The fortune-teller who set the trap for Rick is Frito Diramuto, and he boastfully awarded himself as the leading male actor because of the hoax they made. Suddenly, the wind blows and the crystal, together with the windows behind Frito, was destroyed in a snap. Lynette swiftly dashes towards Frito and grabs the kid's collar to lift him into the sky. She was so mad at Frito and asked where Frito had teleported Rick. The look on Lynette's face is terrifying because Rick needs to show up for the exam on time. Frito doesn't want to provide the location where they teleported Rick and insists that what Lynette says is inappropriate. However, in a snap, Frito's eyelashes fell to the ground. Lynette shows off how quick she is by removing the boy's eyelashes and mentions that he will next the boy's eyes if it will not give him the location of Rick. Frito was so terrified of how quickly Lynette moved and how serious the lady was. He explained that teleportation magic has the highest degree of difficulty, so even a genius like him has a limit of 100 meters, so Rick wasn't sent that far away. On the other hand, Rick already reached the teleportation's destination, and it's not so far from the exam site. He was surprised that he was outside the square in front of the arena. He didn't know what had just happened, or why he suddenly went there. While Rick is trying to stand up, he then realizes that he was just teleported by the fortune-teller, who asked him to sit on the chair. He is trying to understand why the fortune-teller did that, while looking for a way to get back to the site quickly. However, while he is looking for a way to go back, guys from his past started to catch his attention, asking if he is the one that Lost Star mentioned to them. A bunch of men with strong physiques started to show up and check Rick because they heard that Rick beat Angelica. They are wondering how an ordinary guy in his 40s defeats their monster. Rick was surprised by what the man told him and just corrected the man that he is in his 30s only. More men and guards started to show up, and they introduced themselves were the elite guards of the Diramudo household. Rick saw as the guards in black suits are walking towards him holding weapons, and he noticed the leader of the elite guards behind him. The leader of the guards introduced himself and informed that they would bury Rick alive where he was standing. The leader is an old man who shows a serious and dark aura, ready to kill and end someone's life. Because of what the leader told him, Rick realized that since the guards of the Diramudo household are after him, that means that the fortune teller earlier was Frito. He asked the group leader if the goal of the elite guards is to prevent him from leaving, even though his exam begins in 30 minutes. The leader thinks that Rick will last for 30 minutes and insists that Rick might stand their attack within 30 minutes because Rick beat Angelica, so he has at least as much power as a B rank. Rick insisted that the leader was wrong. He is not a B rank because he thinks that Angelica suddenly started to feel unwell during their battles, causing the lady to leave and surrender. However, everybody related to the Diramudos ignores what other people are saying, so the leader just insists that they were a professional combat group willing to end the life of Rick. The leader started to grab his weapons and explained to Rick that the people with him who assembled to finish Rick are all a match for a B rank, and among them, some are a match for A ranks, including him. As Rick saw the weapon of the leader, he believed that the leader was not bluffing because of the weapon with a courtesy reinforcement, so the leader is indeed an A rank too. He started to think that he was doomed in his situation with the elite guards. In his mind, he is thinking that he can't survive because for him, it was a tough match against a single B-rank level second-class knight earlier. Rick can't believe how bad his situation is for being taken out to some place irrelevant to the exam and told that he is going to be made to fail. However, the elite guards didn't waste any time and started to attack after explaining. Luckily, before the leader moved, they were interrupted by the people coming to the exam site. Rick was surprised as the people called him and recognized him. The three of them are asking what Rick is doing outside the exam site, and they are looking for Lynette, too. Rick looked behind him and got even more surprised as he saw the people calling him, while the leader of the elite guard was waiting till the people passed them. The people who just arrived are Rick's senpais. The most powerful warrior on their world has been training him for the past 2 years. What could happen to Rick? Will he make it to the exam in time? Will he pass? Stay tuned for the next chapters, and feel free to suggest the next manga or manhwa. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you liked the video, share it with your friends. Thanks.